Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I know that this content may be familiar for some of you that are returning, but for the sake of those that are first joining us, we are going to cover some of a brief overview of the housing element update. And for a more detailed description, please do watch the recording of our presentation from the April community meeting, which is available on the city's website. Since adoption of the California Housing Element Law in 1969, the state of California has required cities and counties to designate sufficient land at sufficient densities to provide their share of projected housing needs for people of all income levels through the general plan housing element. The housing element is a blueprint for future housing development and must be updated every 8 years and is subject to review and approval by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. Saratoga and other Bay Area jurisdictions are required to submit their next housing element update to the state for review in late 2022, with a deadline for adoption of the housing element by January of 2023. Before housing elements are adopted, the state assesses housing needs throughout California. After the state identifies each region's housing needs, the total number of housing units projected to meet needed at each of these income brackets or levels are distributed among all of the jurisdictions in the region, the cities and the counties, by a regional planning organization. This process of distribution is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, often referred to as RHNA. That's a term you'll be hearing a lot over the course of following the progress of our update. In Santa Clara County, the methodology for distributing the projected housing needs is led by the Association of Bay Area Governments. Saratoga is expected to need to plan for more than 1,700 new homes at different income levels between 2023 and 2031. All the cities in the Bay Area are facing this similar challenge. For example, Los Gatos and Los Altos both have to plan for more than 1,900 more units. To plan for over 1,700 new housing units in Saratoga, we have to make some changes and tough decisions, which is why the City Council directed us to begin a conversation with the community about the housing element almost 2 years before it is due to the state. This started in March and April with an effort to raise community awareness of the housing element mandate and prepare residents for discussions on their values related to housing. This month marks the start of our conversation with the community about your priorities and values. Today, we'll be sharing first impressions of community priorities and values as expressed in the city's housing survey. After we conclude this phase of engagement, we'll affirm our understanding of the community's priorities before we begin the work preparing the updated housing element, identifying possible specific locations for housing, and crafting policy options to plan for more than 1,700 new homes for people across all these different income levels. In the fall, the Planning Commission City Council will consider information gathered in this public engagement process and will then provide direction on preparation of a formal draft of the housing element for public review and environmental analysis. In the survey, some of you asked why we should bother complying with the state mandate to plan for all these new homes. Jurisdictions that do not adopt a housing element in compliance with state law are subject to severe penalties. These include reducing our say over future development, including building permits, subdivisions, and use permits. The state also requires the solutions we come up to be realistic strategies for developing and preserving an adequate supply of housing. Because these strategies must be realistic, we can't make a plan that relies on building all the 1,700 units as either accessory dwelling units or putting them all in one location. We know you have a lot on your plate today, and we appreciate you joining us. There's a lot to learn about this important effort, and I hope that you will continue to stay engaged And those that haven't subscribed to our newsletter, please do that by the end of the meeting. This is your city. Make sure to get the help to help shape its future by participating in this process. And I'd like to do now is pass the presentation on to Debbie Pedro to dive a little deeper into the housing element.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. I am Debbie Pedro, Saratoga's Community Development Director, and I'm going to dive deeper into the community priorities and values about housing that will shape Saratoga's housing element update and answer some questions we've received. If you have watched the city's video on priorities and values and took the city's housing survey, then you've been introduced to some of these concepts and have considered which qualities of Saratoga matters most to you and where you may think that changes would be acceptable. I'm going to review the results of the housing survey that was launched on June 2nd. We've already received currently 606 responses to the survey, and we will keep it open to reach as many community members as possible. There's still much more work to be done before any results from these community engagement phases are shared with the Planning Commission and City Council when they consider the housing element policies. And of course, you will have a chance to express your views directly to the Commission and Council at that time. We've updated these charts since the first community meetings to make sure we're sharing the most current information. The majority of the results have stayed consistent, but I will point out anything that has changed. Most survey participants indicated that they live in Saratoga. The majority reported that they have lived here for 20 years or more, with 10 to 20 years following that. Most of our survey participants also said that they are 41 years and older. The majority live in a single family home, and they own their home. Nearly everyone also said that they are satisfied with their current housing situation. And the majority said the range of housing options currently meet their needs. Of the survey participants that live in Saratoga, most move here for the quality of housing, neighborhood safety, and quality of schools. When asked the type of additional housing that they would be willing to accept in Saratoga, the most favorable housing types were single-family homes, followed by housing for seniors, then townhomes, condominiums, duplexes, triplexes, housing for students, and last, rental apartments. During the first community meeting, we were asked why accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, were not included in this list. Please be assured that based on the support and interest we already see in ADUs, we already plan to utilize them as a strategy to the fullest extent possible. However, it was still an oversight not to have included them, and we will make sure to do so going forward. On the next slide, you can see the current standings for how survey participants rank different housing priorities from 1 to 8, with 1 being the most important. 1, preserving the current character of single-family neighborhoods as much as possible. 2, limiting growth in hillsides and areas at risk for wildfire. 3, retaining a practice of generally limiting buildings to 2 stories. 4, preserving existing commercial locations such as shopping centers with grocery stores. 5, creating mixed-use commercial office and residential projects in the community. 6, building housing for older adults or students. 7, providing a diverse range of housing types to meet the varied needs of people at all income levels. And 8, requiring construction of affordable units as part of housing development projects. While the rest of the survey results were consistent with what we shared at the first 2 community meetings, the ranking of these priorities did change slightly between the first and second meetings. At the time of the first community meeting, preserving existing commercial locations was ranked higher than generally limiting buildings to 2 stories. At the first community meeting, we were also asked to share more detailed survey results. We will be able to do that when we have finished collecting the survey results and will report back to the City Council and the community. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these priorities. Currently, preserving the current character of single-family neighborhoods as much as possible is the community's top priority. While pending legislation may override single-family zoning, and the city may need to consider changes to reach its RHNA or regional housing needs allocation, the city can make an effort to keep its housing element changes in areas of the city outside of single-family neighborhoods as much as possible, such as along main city streets and in areas within walking distance to local businesses and public transit. In some single-family neighborhoods, housing density could be increased by allowing larger lots to be divided into smaller lots, so additional single-family homes could be built. The city could incentivize the construction of accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Additionally, the city could allow duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes to be built in single-family neighborhoods with development standards to protect neighborhood character as much as possible. Next slide. Limiting growth in hillsides and areas at risk for wildfire has been ranked second. Roughly half of Saratoga is in the Wildland Urban Interface, or WUI, the area of the city that is most at risk for wildfire. If growth in Saratoga's hillsides and areas at risk for wildfire is limited, that means increased housing density would only occur in the half of the city that is outside of the Wildland Urban Interface. Because much of the Wildland Urban Interface is on the steep slopes with geological constraints, it may be difficult to significantly increase housing in this area in any event. This map shows which areas of the city fall within the Wildland Urban Interface. Ranked number 3 is retaining a practice of generally limiting buildings to 2 stories. The state assumes that development at a density of 20 units or more per acre meets the criteria for below market rate units. Accommodating development at this density may require 3 to 5 stories or more, depending on the size of the site. The city may need to increase height limits in parts of Saratoga to reach our regional housing needs allocation affordability targets. Preserving existing commercial locations such as shopping centers or grocery stores is currently ranked 4th. Commercial locations would include office complexes as well as shopping centers. We know the community was very disappointed to lose much of the commercial spaces at Quito Village Shopping Center due to Senate Bill 35. The city could make an effort to retain the remaining retail businesses at commercial locations like Argonaut Shopping Center by planning for housing elsewhere, or Saratoga could plan for housing at commercial locations in a way that complies with state mandate and allows commercial uses to remain. On that note, creating mixed use, commercial office and residential projects in the community is currently ranked number 5. One strategy to retain commercial businesses while adding residential housing units is mixed use projects. Mixed use projects include commercial businesses on the ground level and apartments or condominiums above. However, to make mixed use projects feasible, they often require multiple stories to allow both commercial and residential uses. This conflicts with the practice of generally limiting buildings to 2 stories. Because these priorities were ranked so closely, we will definitely need to have further conversations with the community, the Planning Commission, and the City Council about what is preferred. Building housing for older adults and students has been ranked 6th. The city needs to consider what type of housing Saratoga should have for populations like older adults or students. To count towards Saratoga's regional housing needs allocation, these units need to be completely independent living facilities that each have their own kitchen and bathroom. Providing a diverse range of housing types to meet the varied needs of people at all income levels is currently ranked number 7. the state assumes that development of 20 units per acre or more will be affordable. This means the city will need to change the zoning in areas of Saratoga to allow for more apartments, condos, or townhomes to be built. Adding more affordable housing options make it possible for a diverse population to live here, including teachers, first responders, young adults, baristas, grocery store clerks, and social workers who serve this community. And finally, requiring construction of affordable units as part of housing development projects has been ranked 8th. As part of the housing element update, the city needs to consider creating programs and policies to help low-income individuals and families. For example, we can consider requiring developers to include affordable units as part of new housing development projects. Under state law, the city was required to approve the Keto Village project that will result in the construction of 90 new townhomes, but only 9 of them were required to be affordable. The community may have preferred to have more of these units to be affordable in order to meet Saratoga's RHNA targets, and the city could put policies in place to help that happen through the housing element.